Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. We're here on championship weekend in the NFL. Only 2 games this weekend, then the Super Bowl, 3 games left in the NFL season. I know I'm starting to get depressed about it, but I always get excited when I get to talk to my good friend and fellow NFL aficionado, Adam Beer. So, Adam, welcome back to the podcast, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Noah, for having me. It's going to be a good weekend, I think, football-wise.
Yeah, we'll go into the games later, but before we talk about which game are you most excited for? Bucks, Packers, or Bills, Chiefs?
I think they're both going to be great. Really,
Yeah.
it's a coin toss. I like both games. There's a lot of storylines with both teams, and I think it's going to be definitely an entertaining weekend.
Yeah, agreed. I think when you look at it, obviously the NFL is dominated by quarterback talk, and when you look at the four playing this weekend, I mean, it's hard to argue that we don't have the four best this year playing in the second to last weekend. So you really can't complain.
I like too the contrast of the young and the old. Kind of,
Right.
it's the next generation, and then you have Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. So it's kind of you see the future and you see the past in the same weekend, which is kind of neat.
Right. And speaking of the past now, on Wednesday, Phillip Rivers announced his retirement after 17 years in the NFL, 16 with the Chargers organization, and then this past year with the Colts. Um, how will you remember Phillip Rivers' career?
Well, if we want to really have a short podcast, I would say I'm not going to.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that, I mean, when you look statistically, when you look at his ranking in terms of passing yards and touchdowns, he's in the top five.
Yeah.
But he's the most unforgettable top five quarterback like that I can remember. Anyways, and again, I'm fairly, I'm not going back 50 years, but he's a guy that I think he's going to get lost in the shuffle. He's kind of a victim of a generation of talent, whether it's Brett Favre, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Big Ben. He's lost in the shuffle, and I think part of it was because he was in San Diego. Part of it was he never did win a Super Bowl, and he's a guy that, I mean, he's easy to forget. And I hate to say it, it's with all due respect. I mean, what he's accomplished is fascinating and amazing, but in all honesty, like, to me, he's going to be a forgotten guy. In my kids will not really see highlights on Sunday Night Football of Phillip Rivers. It's going to be Tom Brady and etc.
Right. Yeah. He had one of the wonkiest throws I've ever seen. I don't know how he completed so many passes. I mean, you see it leave his hand. It's just like it looks like it was dipping, and then it was like, I mean, credit to him because he might be the least athletic quarterback ever, and he played for 17 years, and like you said, he's fifth all time in passing yards. So credit to him. But what probably we remembered most is that he doesn't swear. He's a big trash talker, but he says like "dag gummit" and all these weird things. And he has 9 kids. I mean, you have 3. Can you imagine having 9?
You're exactly right. When they talk about Phillip Rivers, it's about how good of a person he is, how
Mm-hmm.
good of a father and father figure, and I think he's very religious as well.
Yeah.
Like, he's perfectly clean. He's squeaky clean. But I mean, that's probably why maybe he's not so popular, is because clean doesn't sell. Uh, a good family man that has values and doesn't get into trouble, causes no drama, is really not that entertaining for the media and for football to sell and to create that scandal. So I think in that sense, that's probably maybe part of the reason why he's not as, you know, celebrated. But it's also, too, I would say it's part of the Dan Marino effect. And again, Dan Marino, you'll have diehards argue that he's the best that ever played. But then as soon as you argue against him, it's he didn't win a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that element too. So yeah, he's definitely an interesting character. He'd be a fun guy to sit down and have a beer with and just hear his kind of version of, his career. But in terms of his wonky throw, it makes me feel good when I'm throwing it on the beach or something
Yeah.
in the summer. And it's like, hey, look, I'm just throwing like Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like you'd be throwing it, like I still got a chance here. The wing, I still got something left here, something left in the wing. But I mean, yeah, obviously he came in through the '04 draft class. He went 4th overall to San Diego after Eli Manning wouldn't go. He went to the Giants, and then Big Ben went 11th. So obviously again, he's going to be forgotten because Eli's won 2 Super Bowls, beat Tom Brady twice. And, Big Ben has won 2 Super Bowls, and he's a hell of a lot better than Phillip Rivers, in my opinion. But speaking of Big Ben, I mean, like I said, same draft class. He's coming off that ugly, ugly loss to the Browns a couple weeks ago. Do you think the Steelers want him to come back, or should he want to come back right now?
Well, he essentially he fell off a cliff. It was amazing. Like it was such a fall and so drastic. It was unbelievable to see how quickly he just kind of lost it. It seems. I don't know if there's any, if he's coming back or not. I think that's he's got 1 year left, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I would say the franchise might give him the choice, but they did sign Haskins. I've heard that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think they're starting to get their ducks in a row, the Steelers organization, and I think they've come to the realization that Big Ben's time is up. So he may get a year out of respect, but in terms of what I'm seeing on the field, it's not embarrassing. I wouldn't say yet, but I mean, if he does that for another year, it's kind of like the Eli Manning effect. They held him too long. The organization wasn't willing to kind of move on, and I think most organizations have that capacity to switch. Not to be cruel to your players, but I mean, you got to go with.
Yeah, cut bait.
What do you think?
Yeah, I I wouldn't want him to come back. Um, if he doesn't come back and he retires, it's going to be a lot of dead money on their cap, so that obviously will hurt them. It's close to $30 million that they're going to have to eat. Um, but yeah, the Eli Manning one is a good apt comparison. They should have cut him years and years before they did. I mean, they were winning 4 or 5 games a year for 3 years, and then they bring him back, and they got Daniel Jones, and that they have that awkward transition where he's the backup quarterback. And I think sometimes you just gotta get the Band-Aid and rip it off with these teams. It's not just football. I think of the Toronto Maple Leafs struggling for years where they wouldn't trade Caberlet and Sundin and McCabe when I was younger. Like, you got to yes, that you love these players, but they're not what they used to be. And you got to get rid of them before they're junk.
Well, I would say like owners and GMs are fearful, and coaches even for that matter, are really fearful. Like, for example, a Deshaun Watson is a completely different story because he can come back and haunt your organization for 10
Yes.
years. And you're going to say, why did you do it? Why did you do it? Where with guys like Manning and Big Ben, there's no fear of them going anywhere else and kind of rekindling their magic and making you look bad. So I think it becomes very dangerous when you do hang on to anything too long. It's kind of like the stock market. If you keep holding on, eventually you're going to lose everything. So there's a time to cut, your losses and go out on a high and pay tribute and respect to them. But I also think there's a time and a place for an organization to make those quick decisions because again, like New York, I find New York has kind of spent the last 3 years chasing its tail. And they're still no further ahead, and they're wasting Barkley's good years. And
Mhm.
like to me, they're a disaster too. 3 years down the road.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I mean, he's had 2 injuries. Saquon is so talented, but running backs, you got 5 good years if you're lucky when they're at their top of their game. I mean, look at Ezekiel Elliott. He's done now. He's beaten up. I mean, there's not a lot of Adrian Petersons who can play at a high level in their mid 30s at running back where they can get 1,000+ yards, and you got to take advantage before they're dried up. But another guy we saw this past weekend, Drew Brees, ugly, ugly game against Tampa. I'm not surprised that they didn't win. I had Tampa winning the game, but I didn't think he'd look as bad as he did. 3 picks. He couldn't throw more than 10 yards down the field. I mean, it was like Tom Brady-esque, but worse. Like, it was dink and dunk to its all-time level for Drew Brees. But you expect him to retire?
Well, just to go back to your previous point, though, about you have a running back for 5 years. Well, Alvin Kamara is
Mm-hmm.
at his pinnacle, and they shot one of the bullets, so to speak, this playoff
Yeah.
with putting Brees in there when he really wasn't up to, it wasn't the Drew Brees of old. I would say he's going to retire. He's the type of guy that I think would have a job in the booth like that. He's well spoken. He's got a fairly clean past, as far as I know.
Yeah,
So,
apparently he's got a deal with NBC already.
well, there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that he has somewhere to go, and I would say a lot of the hesitancy, and I think it's for anybody. I think it's in human nature. Is it's your fear of the unknown. So a lot of times, whether it's Ben or whether it's Eli or whether it's Drew, is they hang on because it's defined them since they've been in middle school, right? It's football has defined them. So I can see that element of not wanting to kind of hang it up, but I would say it's also a danger to have those 3 or 4 years that you're just hanging on to nothing. So I would say, yeah, I would say Drew's probably going to shift to the booth, and I think it's time in New Orleans for somebody to take over. I don't know if that's Teddy Bridgewater. He did have a nice throw. He come in and had the longest throw of the game against Tampa, but I know you're a Teddy fan, so
Well,
Jameis Winston. Sorry,
yeah,
I was Teddy. Jameis Winston.
no, yeah, Jameis. I mean, I would have taken Drew out in the fourth quarter. I would have put Jameis. I mean, what do you have to lose? I mean, he can at least throw. He might throw 4 picks, but you're going to lose the game anyway. Who cares if it's 56-20? Like, okay, well, if you lose 10-7, it doesn't matter the score. I mean, a loss is a loss. But I mean, he's a free agent. They have Taysom Hill under contract. I wouldn't feel great about Taysom being the long-term option. I mean, there's always your buddy who's getting floated right now, Stafford. The new coach might not want to, he's been there forever and he's had little to no success. He's got a lot of stats, but no wins or what really counts. So maybe I don't see New Orleans maybe going there, but Jameis was there a year and they didn't play him. I mean, they played Taysom over Jameis, so they can't have that much confidence in Jameis Winston.
Yeah, and I can see where that comes from. So for every touchdown you get an interception. Like there's a
Yeah.
reason why Winston, he's got the body, he's got the arm, he's got everything. You look at him and he's like, your ideal quarterback.
Yeah.
But for some reason he's not getting opportunities based on his history and how he's playing. So there's a lot there. I mean, Stafford. There's a lot of quarterback questions now that Stafford's name is out on the market, which again hurts me as a Lions fan a little bit. But I can understand that maybe Stafford does want to crack at it. But again, there's going to be a lot of quarterback shuffles. And I mean, we'll talk later about Deshaun Watson too. So I don't know what I would do as New Orleans. I think there's going to be some decent quarterbacks available, but there are a lot of hands in that pot. So it's going to be interesting to see what Peyton does and what direction they decide to go. And as you mentioned earlier, I mean, you got Kamara, you have to use, and Thomas. Like they're really they have the pieces, but they just need that quarterback.
I mean, yeah, they've been to the divisional round 3 years in a row, and they've lost. I mean, that game against Minnesota. I mean, everybody remembers that one where Stephon Diggs, they missed the tackle, that idiot play. Then there's that game against the Rams where they get screwed out of that the pass interference that wasn't called. And then last year they lose to Minnesota again, or sorry, they lose to San Francisco last year. They got to win now. Like it's win now or never for this team because Sean Payton, he's not going to be around there forever. I think he's still a very good coach, but you got Kamara, you got Thomas, like you said. I mean, their offensive line's getting older. So a lot of decisions in New Orleans, and I don't think Jameis or Taysom is really the best option if you want to win next year. Like if your Super Bowl is your aspiration, I don't think that's the best option to take.
Now, how are they for cap space? Because I mean, if they were to get a guy like Deshaun Watson, is that even viable? I think they're over the cap, aren't they?
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to get him. It would be too tough. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, who wouldn't want Deshaun Watson? I mean, well, yeah, like I said, we'll talk. We'll go back to the Lions just because we're talking about Deshaun Watson now because it's such an interesting topic. But yeah, he's not talking to the organization. The organization, the funny thing is about these bad organizations, and Houston's one of them. They said that they wanted him to be part of the head coaching hiring process. They didn't say that they'd hire his choice, but they wanted his input, which the organization didn't have to do. But when you do it, you should probably listen to him if that's what your intent was, right? I mean, that just makes sense in life. So he says, I really like Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Okay, maybe you don't have to hire him, but for me, at least give him an interview. I mean, that's who your quarterback wanted. So at least, BS and interview the guy, even if you're not going to hire him. But they didn't even do that until Watson says, I want out of here. So do you think it's repairable in Houston, or do you think he's going to go?
I think it's a train wreck from what I've been kind of reading and so on and so forth. The fact that you traded Hopkins, his best receiver, like for nothing,
Yeah.
and it's I don't really know what's going on there. I find it funny that they gave him all that money and then it kind of fell apart. But they must have maybe promised him the world to get him to sign that contract. Again, it's to me, it's I struggle sometimes with an employee slash employer relationship. In terms of your Watson was paid well, substantial, and really it's the general manager and the owner's really decision what they do. But if you're manipulating the player and making promises that are unkept, I have issue with that too for sure. So I think there's a lot going on too. From what I understand, there's some I don't know what is it McNair, the kind of really strange GM that's kind of worked his way to the top without any qualifications, like he's a minister. Is that
Yeah,
the
he's they well the owner, it was the new owner is Al McNair. He's the son of the late I forget the father's name. He died a few years ago. But he's kind of been running this ship terribly since his father passed. And they hired the Patriots, a guy in the Patriots system who they've been doing that for years. I mean, they've had Bill O'Brien as head coach. He came from New England. Romeo Cannell, defensive coordinator. He was from New England. Their last GM before this new one, New England. And I think for Deshaun, he was like, okay, like, are we just going to pick from New England here? Like, can we not interview other people? Like, yes, okay, Bill Belichick's a genius, but what have these guys done here? Bill O'Brien traded away my best option and gave me a running back who was long in the tooth. Like, I I don't know how they can repair it unless somehow Eric Bieniemy decides to take that job. But I know myself, Adam, out of spite, I would not take that job because they didn't want to interview me before Deshaun made noise about it. I would say I'm staying in Kansas City and I'll wait. Maybe Andy Reid retires. I'll take that job eventually. But just out of me being proud, I would not. I hope he doesn't take that job because it's a train wreck, like you said.
and I don't think you'll have a hard time finding one when the job is right. That's the thing too.
But he hasn't gotten one this hiring process, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be a fly on the wall in some of those interviews in terms of what teams. And again, we can go to Dan Campbell later on. Okay, with the
Mm-hmm.
Lions. I mean, there's a lot to me. There's a lot there. Um, but I think this relationship with Watson is over. I think there's no kind of going back. Uh, the Bill O'Brien firing, maybe I thought that was an appeasement move, but that didn't seem to work. And I think once a player checks out, it really allows any little thing that is off. And I mean, they start camp for next year and he's unhappy, then everything comes back to the table. So there's that element that I think sometimes it's best to split before things get too crazy. But as an organization, how embarrassing is that you're going to end up without Hopkins and by the looks of it, Watson, and you're really going to have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So again, we can talk about Watson and the possibilities, but I think it's beyond reproach, and I wouldn't be in any rush to get into Houston because, from what I'm seeing, it's already just like you'd have no say in the organization. You're
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like a token hire to appease Watson for 6 months. So no thanks on my end.
No, I think they're gonna have a hard time finding a head coach because a lot of guys are just like, I'll stay here as defensive coordinator and I'll be stable at least. Like I have a better team because their team went forward. I mean, if they didn't have Bill O'Brien as GM, they'd have the third pick in the draft, but they traded that to the Dolphins. So like they're a mess. But we're, I know Melissa's a big fan of the Jets. I think the Jets probably can provide Houston with the best package. I mean, they got the second pick in the draft. They got two picks in the first round. I mean, they got abundant of picks just because they've been inept for a decade. But other than Jets, do you see any other potential landing spots for him?
Well, I think the headline in the New York Post was "Whatever it takes."
Yeah.
When the rumblings came out, so I think New York, the Jets are primed. If I'm not mistaken, it was who had mentioned about him Watson get there as soon as possible. He used to play for Seattle.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Jamal Adams, maybe. I don't know.
No, it wasn't. Anyway, but it's New York would be a great
Oh,
spot.
Richard Sherman. Sorry, Richard
Richard
Sherman.
Sherman, yes, that's it. Thanks. Just drawing a blank. But I think you're right exactly. There's a nice package that for in terms of Houston they could start over. It would be something that they could build with and maybe sell to the fan base a little bit. It would be interesting in terms of the Jets. Again, Darnold. To me, I kind of feel for Darnold a bit. I don't really think he's been given not necessarily a fair shake, but he's got the potential to be one of those guys that you get rid of and you look back and say, "Oh man, we just traded Ryan Tannehill."
Hmm.
He's one of those guys that I think could develop a little bit down the road. But when you have a generational talent like Watson, I would say as an organization, especially New York, big media market, what an opportunity for the Jets to almost instantaneously turn your franchise around and become the number one team in the city again. And it's even with the shambles that the Giants are in, they're still the number one front page story in New
Yeah.
York. Jets are still, on the back page. So I think if you brought him in as an organization, if I was running the Jets, that'd be exciting. You get the buzz, you get the ticket sales, if we can get back in the stadium ever. But it would be a really good move to kind of give them instant credibility. And Jets fans are pretty obnoxious and rabid, and they would just eat it up.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree about Darnold too. I mean, I don't know if he's terrible or if he's great because you got Adam Gase, and that's like putting mist. It's like blindfolding you and saying, "Okay, go play." Uh, he looked high when they hired him, so I don't know what he was like on a day-to-day basis. Could have been chewing CBD gummies the whole time he was there. He looked like it the way he was coaching. So, but yeah, I like Watson to the. I mean, I'd want if I was Houston, you can get Darnold back, you can get the third pick. Probably, I mean, it's going to be a big package. I mean, Carson Wentz, when Eagles traded up to get him, they traded a first, two firsts, a fourth, and a second the next year, and he hadn't played a snap in the NFL. So it's whatever. It's going to be a big package because Watson's a top 5 quarterback right now for me. I mean, he can do it all. Uh, Miami would be interesting too. They have the third pick, they got Tua, so they could trade Tua for Watson basically. If Houston was interested in seeing what they could do with him, um, a pipe dream for me. I think it would be crazy if he went there as San Francisco. With Kyle Shanahan, I think they could do incredible things together. Just his offensive mind and with Watson's skill set, I think that would be the NFC West. Russell Wilson be shaking in his boots if that trade goes through and Pete Carroll. But no, that'll be a storyline throughout the offseason. I mean, we're not even there yet, and it's already front page news.
And just to add to the Jets got Saley, so I mean I don't know how they would kind of work together.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not really sure what to expect from him. I do like his kind of sideline vigor, but I mean when you put him in with Watson, I mean it might be interesting to see kind of I don't know his approach. He's more offensive or defensive or what's his kind of approach?
Yeah, he's a defensive coordinator.
Okay,
Yeah, he was
oh
defensive coach in San Fran.
nice, nice.
Oh, just gonna break some news here on To The Point because it just popped up my phone. So the Winnipeg Jets have actually traded forward Pierre-Luc Dubois and a draft pick to the Winnipeg Jets for Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. So big trade this morning. Dubois only played 3 minutes and 55 seconds the other night. Did not play the whole second and third period towards benching him. And Laine's only played 1 game this year and he's won it out. So a trade for both teams with players wanting out of their current landing spots.
Wow, that's huge news. That's an old-fashioned blockbuster player for player.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Laine go, but I like the Jets a lot before the year, and I like them now. But yeah, big trade here this morning. So we're talking football. When news comes up here, we'll trade. We'll talk about it. So
Two bad cities though, like Line to Columbus and Dubois
yeah,
to Winnipeg.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it was a regular year, Winnipeg would be good. I mean, they get good crowds, but it's cold right now and no fans and COVID. So I see your point. But before we move on to the games this weekend, I mean, you're a Lions fan, and they hired your new buddy Dan Campbell. He's busting kneecaps and he's doing all kinds of the dude, and but this guy gets a head coaching job from the Lions, and he gets a 6-year deal, and he hasn't have been a head coach before. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, again, I liked him. I was excited about the hire until I heard his press
Yeah,
conference. He was talking about like being a cannibal, eating kneecaps on the way up. So
yeah,
it's definitely worth a listen to if you hear Dan Campbell's interview. He just keeps talking about standing up and getting punched down and taking a bite out of a kneecap, and eventually the other opponent falls down. Well, I mean, that's nice in theory, rah, rah, rah. But I mean, the Lions need a coach that knows their X's and O's as well.
hmm
So I'm not going to judge. I'm going to take my time and kind of see what happens. The thing about the 6-year deal to me, Noah, is that tells me something. It tells me that I think Matt Stafford is out. It would give him maybe a year or two to kind of get things done on that end, and then give him enough time if they did draft a quarterback this year that he can work with them and try to give them an opportunity to develop that quarterback in 4 or 5 years down the road. This is the team that I produced. I am of the Pittsburgh Steelers philosophy. I like consistency in coaching. I think it's really important, and I
hmm
think players need to understand that he's not going anywhere. So either I adapt to the philosophy and the game plan, or I'm out. So I can understand a 6-year deal, but I would also say, why don't you do 3 and 3? So you give him 3 years guaranteed. If you're working, prove yourself for the other three, earn the other three, as opposed to having the three right off the bat.
right.
So I'm not going to judge. I do like his kind of. He feels like he's right from, I don't know. He's definitely rough around the edges to a degree,
hmm
but I'm not going to judge. But I mean, you can't do much worse than Matt Patricia, and he's back to New England, I hear. So
Yeah, of course he is. He never should have left. Poor Lions. Poor Lions. They had to take him. But yeah, maybe the 6-year deal, like you said, they want Stafford out. I also think the Lions have been firing coaches like McDonald's has been grilling burgers. I mean, they flip them day by day. I mean, every year it's another coach fired. So maybe to get him, they had to say, we uh, we have to trade, we have to give you a couple extra years so that you're happy and that you're stable, because coaching year to year is not fun for anybody. I mean, coaching for your career is not a good feeling. But I mean, if they could draft a quarterback. I mean, you got some guys like Zach Wilson. Maybe they draft a Mac Jones at Alabama. They could do that. But yes, the Stafford trade will be interesting to see what they can get for him and what his trade market is. I mean, I pick on him a lot, and that's probably not fair, but he's a good quarterback, but he's 32. And the past couple of years, I mean, he's been getting banged up a ton. I mean, this year, he probably shouldn't have played the last couple of games. He's had rib issues. I mean, he's had back surgery, 2 back surgeries, I think. So he's not in perfect health right now either.
yeah, I agree. I mean, he did take his lumps, and I think it was last year or the year before. His wife had some issues with cancer, so
Yeah,
it's
she
been a
had brain cancer, I think. Yeah.
yeah, it's been a couple of years of kind of craziness. But I would say for Campbell, he's got a big job. They got their they have signings. I think the offensive line, there's like 8 people, or defensive line, there's 8 people that they have possibly up for contract. Galladay, do they franchise tag him? What are you going to do with Stafford? So like he's got a lot of work to do. And if I mean he's just talking about getting punched down, he's going to get punched down here in the next year or two, because
Mhm.
that franchise is really, it's not an organization that is very settled. It's not an up and coming franchise. It's a franchise that there's a lot to be done before you can even think about changing culture and figuring out your culture as a group. So it should be interesting to watch from afar to see what they do. I don't know. What do you think, they'll give Galladay the franchise tag, or what do you think's going on there?
I think it makes sense to do that, because if they're going to keep Stafford, because Stafford has such a connection with him. I mean, Galladay's been one of the better red zone touchdown threats in the past 3-4 years in the NFL. And that's who really Stafford throws to in the end zone when he's healthy. And if you don't, I mean, Galladay's going to get some good money on the open market. So I don't think if you don't franchise him, he probably leaves because he'll get more money. And does he really want to go back to Detroit? I mean, you got to go back and work for Ford. I don't really want to do that. I mean, come on.
What about, I mean, and again, too, if you do that and you trade Stafford, then you have you have a disgruntled wide receiver. So
Exactly.
again,
Yeah.
if I was Dan Campbell, I'd be very forthright with my players and my organization, and I'd sit down with them and say, look, here's where we're at. You know, try to get some feedback from them and say, what do you want to do? And I mean, if you don't want to have Galladay there without Stafford disgruntled in year two,
Mm-hmm.
well, look, you got too much to worry about. So I try to kind of clear the air, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm not going to judge yet. I'm going to give him at least a year or two, maybe, before I start, chopping them down too much. But I'm hopeful. Anyways, that's all we can have as Lions fans is hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, interesting hire. I don't think anybody had heard his name until the Lions hired him, but good on, he got a job. So good on him. So pivoting to the games this weekend, we got, like we said earlier, we got two Bucks at Green Bay. Both games this weekend are actually rematches. The Bucks destroyed Green Bay in Week 6 in Tampa Bay. But we come to this weekend. I mean, Tom Brady, obviously, a lot of people see him as the greatest player in NFL history. He's won to 14 championship games in 19 seasons as a starting quarterback. I mean, that speaks for itself. But for you, Adam, what's the key to them beating the Packers this weekend?
I don't I don't know if they can, but the thing with them is there's always a miracle play within Tom Brady. In terms of X's and O's, again, I'm not that well versed in the X's and O's of it, but I would say that Tampa does have a good kind of run defense. So if they
Mm-hmm.
can force Rodgers to continually throw, double cover Devontae Adams, and then just wait for that miracle play from Brady that we see almost every game, I would say that's the recipe. I feel that going into Lambeau Field, it's going to be cold. Again, we know Tom Brady can play in that environment, but maybe some of the other Tampa guys can't. Is Antonio Brown? I'm
He's
not sure if
out. He's ruled
he's out
out.
for
He's
sure.
out. Yeah.
So I think that's really in order for Tampa to win, they're going to have to play a perfect football game. And they're going to have one or two big plays, whether it's downfield. Tom doesn't take many downfield shots. He'll take 4 or 5 a game, and when he does, they usually kind of work out. So I'd say kind of keep it close, try to keep Adams contained, and I mean that's the only way I would say going in. I don't know what the money line is, but I would say Green Bay is the favorite. I don't know by how
I
much.
think it's Green Bay at 3.5.
Oh, that's tight then. That's close.
Yeah,
So,
it's a pick 'em basically.
but again, I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. You can never underestimate Tom Brady and what they can do. So I would say I'm going into the game expecting a Green Bay victory, not necessarily by 20, but I would say in the end, I think they'll be able to, you know, he'll Aaron Rodgers will be able to throw Devontae Adams open. Is the thing.
Right. Yeah. I think for them to win, they got to do the Patriot way, so to speak. And that's, last week they won because they created turnovers and Tom Brady used his short passing game. They got a lot of guys that can run good routes. I mean, Fournette, if he can keep catching the ball, I mean, last week he had his best game of the year and it's the playoffs. So you need to do that. He ran for 63, but he caught 6 balls, which, we can remember Tom Brady throwing to, Amendola, to James White out of the backfield, to, his running backs. He loves doing that. Gronk, I think it's time for Gronk to have that big game. He had 1 catch last week. He dropped 2 that were right in his hands. Cameron Brate has really emerged as a top target for Brady. I mean, he just feels secure with him. He just runs to the sticks and he sits. You need 6. He gets there. He gets the first down. I mean, that's Tom Brady-esque. That's what he loves in a receiver.
Is Brate
And
the rookie? He's the young rookie. Isn't he number 12? Is that who it is? Or
no, Brate's been around 4 or 5 years.
okay.
The rookie
Who's
is
the young
Scotty
kid?
Miller, the real fast the
He looked
white
good.
kid.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
he looked good last week.
yeah. And with Antonio Brown out, Scotty Miller will play even bigger role because he's Antonio Brown basically replaced him. But yeah, run the ball. They had 127 rush yards last week, and I agree with you. I think they're going to need to create a turnover or two. Devin White, he's emerging as a superstar. I mean, the way he played last week, I mean, he was the best player on the field for either team in my mind, offense or defense. Brady was just okay, but he really changed that game. I mean, forced fumble recovery. He had a pick. So I think Tampa has a shot at winning this game, and I think they need to do those things to keep it close.
Well, whenever you have Tom Brady at the helm, I think you always have a shot. And
Yeah.
if you look at if the money line is 3.5 points, the Vegas generally they know what they're doing. So this game could, if it's only a 3 point differential based on Vegas odds, yeah, Tampa Bay definitely have a shot. Um, so again, it'll be interesting to watch. I'm hopeful that it'll be Green Bay. I'm Tom Brady'd out. I'm tired of it.
So
But
you'd rather see Green Bay win a division rival than Tom Brady?
I'd rather see Green Bay win. Yeah, no question. Yeah,
Wow.
I know in the Lions division, but it doesn't. It kind of gives credit to their division why they haven't won it for so long. Green
Yeah.
Bay keeps so dominant, but
We've been using that excuse for 30 years or what?
it's working for me so far. Anyway,
Yeah. Um, yeah. And for Green Bay, I think honestly, Adam, it's more important that they can run. You mentioned Tampa Bay has a really good run defense, which they do. But I think it's crucial that they try to at least establish it early because I didn't find Aaron played very well last week against the Rams. He was missing throws. He was throwing the ball away because he didn't want to take hits. But they ran for 191 rush yards last week between Aaron Jones, Williams, and AJ Dillon. I think it's important that they do that so that they have the play action game and that Rodgers can start to take shots to Lazard, who we got one with last week, and then also Valdez Scantling, who can just flat out fly.
I would say, yeah, with Tampa Bay too, what I haven't seen from them is they haven't really played a good quarterback yet. I know you said Aaron Rodgers had a bad game last week. Yeah, based on Aaron Rodgers standards, but Tampa hasn't really faced a quarterback at this point.
No,
Do you find?
no. I mean,
Like,
since they really got hot, since they lost to the Chiefs, they've beaten Atlanta twice. They've beaten Detroit. So, and Stafford got hurt in the first play, so they beat Chase Daniel. Then they beat Heineke, who played his heart out. I'll give him credit there. And beat up old man Drew Brees. So no, they really haven't played a great quarterback yet.
yeah. So I mean, I will give Rodgers a okay game in the playoff run. I think he's coming to play. I think talk about his statement game.
Means a
I
lot
would
to
say
him.
both games are statement games on both sides, which is interesting. But I think Rodgers, I think he wants this.
He needs this. He needs this win.
Yeah.
He's got one Super Bowl. He's so talented. He should have more. And I think that irks him. I mean, it would anybody, I think. But he's doing it for a long time. He's the MVP. And I think I read this week that the MVP of the league. I mean, he hasn't been named it yet, but if he isn't named MVP, I'd be shocked next weekend. The MVP hasn't won the Super Bowl since like 1995 of the league. So it's been a long time since we've seen them actually win it. The same season that they win the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I hope to see him play a better game because I worry. I mean, the first game against Tampa, he was just a deer in headlights. I mean, they got beat 38-10, 38 unanswered points, and it's a big game for him. But it's also a huge game for Tampa Bay because if Brady wins this game, he'll go to another Super Bowl, his 10th, and the Super Bowl's in Tampa Bay. They'll be the first team to ever host a Super Bowl in the history of the NFL. I mean, that's a big deal.
That would be really neat to see. But again, I'm tired of him.
Yeah.
Like he's had his moment in the sun. Again, maybe it's because I just not a big Patriots fan or what have you, but I hope that Aaron Rodgers can pull through and the Packers, and I think they will. But anything is possible, and that would be kind of neat. Tampa Bay in Tampa, but with COVID, I mean, are there going to be any people in the stands? So really,
There's
it's a moot point.
22,000.
They'll let 22,000 in.
Yeah, including they announced yesterday 7,500 frontline workers, vaccinated frontline workers are going to go to the game.
Okay, because I know Florida's COVID rules are pretty.
Yeah, they're having like fairs last night, so they're
Good for
just yeah, they're Mardi Gras down there.
well, good for them.
Yeah, and another thing I think could be important here is the kicking game. Mason Crosby is usually a great kicker. He hasn't missed a field goal all year, but he's missed 6 extra points. And Suck Up for Tampa Bay has missed 7.
They're all missing. All the kids. Zucker was Baltimore's kicker. It's
Yeah,
Zucker. What's his name again?
Tucker.
Tucker. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
He was missing, but I mean, there was a lot of wind there too.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how important the kicking game is and how much like disrespect the kickers get. You know,
Yeah.
nobody cares about the kicker. Like nobody even gives them a
I
high
hate
five.
them. I wish there's no kickers in the game, to be honest.
Really, what's the solution? It'd be interesting to.
4th down every play.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really interesting. I read I don't know, it was maybe a year ago, it was an article about a high school football coach that
Yeah.
never kicked on 4th down. He always ran the play, and like he won the state championship because he basically statistically said I'm more likely to get 7 points or whatever.
Right.
So you go right to 4th down, no field goal kicks.
No, if you're in the opponent territory, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're enough distance, you have to go for it. 4th down, no kickers.
Wow, what, no extra points or anything like that? Like
Go for 2.
wow. So just take the poles right out.
Yeah, because they have so much impact on the game, and it bothers me because they sit there over there doing nothing, pretending they're stretching, drinking Gatorade, then they wheel out there, and then they screw you, or they're the hero. Like Cody Parkey, like you really want to remember him? I'd kill him.
Well, Yankowski, like with the career, he comes in, he looks like he's a pirate, and he just
Yeah.
starts shooting the ball.
Yeah, he looks like he's been drinking beer for 3 months.
Well, half the time they call kickers, like I think Prater for Detroit, they called him off the couch. Literally, they said, "Okay, we got a new kicker, so come on in." Phone call. I think he was working his day job, and he's like, "All right, I'll get into the Lions franchise and kick football." But I mean, I don't know if I like that idea. I do like kind of tradition, but you do make a point. But that to me, that makes it entertaining when there's a 50-yard kick for the win. I know it stinks for the guys that put their.
What about a Hail Mary for the win?
Yeah, Hail Mary. But I mean, those.
That Hopkins play, I remember that one. That was pretty entertaining.
Well, they call it a Hail Mary for a reason because it never generally turns out.
Yeah.
I kind of like the kick. I like to, the double doink and all that stuff. It does add to it and can change the flow. So I don't know if I'm ready for that drastic of a change yet.
All right. Well, one day that'll happen. That's the same day.
XFL.
This will happen when the shootout's gone and like all this other crap I hate, video replay. When it all happened on one day, they'll call it Noah Day, and it'll just be fantastic. I can't wait for that day to come. But maybe one day, Adam. Maybe one day.
Well, let's listen one step at a time. We
Yeah.
get 3-on-3 now. The shootout's kind of faded away a little bit for you. So
a little bit, yeah. 10 minutes, 3-on-3. Let's go. Second game, we got Buffalo at Kansas City. Kansas City beat Buffalo in week 4 earlier this year. Obviously, they're very different teams now. I mean, Buffalo down the stretch is really Josh Allen has emerged as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. The Buffalo defense only allowed 3 points to Baltimore last week. Bigger deal for you, Adam, Mahomes' health or the Buffalo Bills passing game?
Well, I think it's if Mahomes is not playing, it's
He's playing. He's playing.
He's playing. I mean, but he's not going to be the same. Andy Reid is not running the same plays.
No.
Pass option, all that stuff. It's really going to hamper. This is going to be a really good test for Andy Reid because really he's going to have to coach his way around a Bills offense that hasn't really fired up yet. But for some reason, I'm not really worried about that with Buffalo. I know it takes some time to kind of get going. They managed to get the win. I don't care if you win 3-0, 6-3.
Win's a win.
A win is a win. So my biggest concern would be if I was a Chiefs fan, the health of Mahomes. If I'm Buffalo, I am blitzing straight out for the first 5 plays. I'm going to knock him down, knock him senseless. I know it's not nice to say, but if Mahomes can kind of come around and maybe pull it together and show those flashes, that to me, it's an iconic game for him. It'll go down in history. It'll be the clip of him kind of like a deer on ice last week where he basically couldn't stand up. And if he can get to a Super Bowl and win it, it's going to be as iconic as Tiger Woods with his knee when he won the U.S. Open or whatever.
Right.
So I would be more concerned about Mahomes. I think Buffalo, listen, they're where they want to be. They have a huge advantage. If you would have told them that they're going to go in with a questionable Patrick Mahomes, they would have signed on the dotted line the minute, yes, put us in that game. And I mean, it just takes a few plays. It takes one pass to kind of get that Buffalo offense going. So, to be honest, I'd be more worried about Mahomes' condition.
Yeah, I I agree about blitzing, and this is gonna sound harsh, but this is just sports, and it happens in every sport. You know a guy's injured, you take advantage of it, and if you got to take a roughing the passer penalty early, do it, hit him, because it sounds barbaric, but you want to win. I don't like Greg Williams got fired for a year for bounty gate on Brett Favre, but guess what? The Saints won the Super Bowl, and Brett Favre was never the same, so that's kind of upsetting. But he should have retired 5 years before that anyway. So screw Brett Favre. You're still doing your little jeans commercials. Yeah, Wrangler, whatever the hell he's doing there. Still throwing a football in those commercials, so he's okay. But get some pressure on him, and I think we'll see early if he can move, because he had that toe or leg injury last week before he got the concussion. I think I think that was a bit of a sell job by CBS. So like, oh, he's so beat up here and he's grabbing his ass cheek. And I said, well, you Tiger Woods, like what's the injury here? Like your glute's not firing or what? Like, but pressure him. But I agree about Andy Reid. I think you got to get Kelsey. I think is going to be the biggest factor in this game, because he runs those simple routes where you know where he's going to be. He's in the middle of the field. Get him open. Use Tyreek Hill in the backfield for design runs. I mean, Hardman too. I mean, they had two big runs last week where they're so fast, they're so hard to contain. So, but Buffalo, I don't worry about their offense either, because I think they can bury this Chiefs defense if they find their game. I mean, Diggs, it's hard to argue he wasn't the best receiver in the NFL this year. He's playing at such a high level. We see, John Brown at over 100, close to 100 yards last week. And, Josh Allen, if the weather's going to be pretty good as of right now, not a lot of wind, he can throw a deep ball as good as Mahomes or better. So this should be a fun one.
It's going to be awesome. It's the next generation, as we talked about earlier. You got the contrast with Rodgers and Brady, and then you get the next generation. Again, back to your point about kind of Mahomes and barbaric. I mean, if you don't understand that the NFL is a meat grinder, like it is. I mean, it's literally next up. But there is a question to be asked, like, do you even play him? The way he looked going off the field, he was out. Like he couldn't even, like, there's a moral question there whether he should even be thought of playing this weekend.
Right.
The other week too, I think it was Beasley got hit, and he was the same thing. He couldn't walk, and he's on the field the next week. So I mean, 5 years ago there was all that discussion about CTE and all these things, and they put these policies in place, which is great. But when push comes to shove, Mahomes is going to be there. So again, like, does the responsibility lie with the player, or does that lie with the franchise, or does it lie with the league? Noah,
I think it has to be the league, Adam, because the player is always going to say he wants to play. I think in most scenarios, a player is never going to say, "Oh, I'm not good to go." I mean, that's just sports. The team is selfish because they have. I mean, you're going to want Patrick Mahomes over Chad Henne 101 out of 100 days a week. I mean, come on. And the league is a tough one to judge on it, because they want Patrick Mahomes on the field for ratings. I mean, the NFL will still do good ratings on Sunday, but you might not have great ratings after halftime, because if it's Chad Henne against Buffalo, I don't think it's going to be that close.
No, and I mean, if you could put posters up of this weekend, you know what I mean, those old boxing posters where two guys are facing off. I mean, you couldn't ask for four better guys on the poster.
Yeah.
So I understand that the league, and they're paid handsomely. The players are paid extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think we all know, or to me personally, what I saw last week, there's no way. If that was me, I wouldn't be like probably out of bed yet.
Yeah.
So there are questions there about what to do, and yeah, ratings are nice, but I would say this could be a career again. And if we plan our game strategy like you and I would as coaches and as competitive nature with roughing the passer, boom, boom, boom. I'll take the 15 yards. Well, this could basically be could be a career-ending game, if you think of
Mhm.
it in that sense.
Yeah, it'd be both teams aren't great at running the football, and I think it'll be important to see Buffalo wins. I think if Josh Allen can run the ball, I mean, they had 32 rush yards last week. They only ran it 8 times. I mean, he needs to get some design runs in this game because they don't have Moss anymore. Singletary's not a great runner. And for Kansas City, they have Edwards-Helaire, who's they haven't announced that he's playing yet. They got Le'Veon Bell, who's still questionable. So the team that maybe runs the ball just adequately may have the big advantage in this game because both of them rely so heavily on their passing offenses.
Well, we talked about this before. No, one of the issues I had with the Lions is they had no run game. It was always pass in Stafford, and that's why he's gotten beat up.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you can run the ball, okay, I know they didn't run the last week. If you're running the ball, that tires the defense, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you do have an opportunity, okay, your defense is tired, and
Air it
now
out.
air it out. So I do agree Buffalo does have to incorporate that, but I think part of the reason they haven't is because they haven't had one of those wins where they're up by they couldn't afford to. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? They had to kind of keep it close and make sure that they were getting those first downs and managing the clock. In terms of managing the clock, what do you think? I would say Reed has the experience there. I
Mhm.
think this game's going to come down to possibly, that last 2 minutes. So what do you see happening there with clock management?
Yeah. Both coaches, I mean, Sean McDermott and Andy Reid, I mean, Sean McDermott coached under Andy Reid, so they have a history. I think they're both good at keeping their timeouts. I think that's one of the biggest things in the NFL is just knowing when to use one. And obviously, there's going to be fans in Kansas City, so that's something that Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo had some home fans, 6,700 the past couple weeks. But I think I mean, we saw Andy Reid with Henny that play they called him fourth down. I mean, that was a ballsy call, and I don't worry about Andy Reid at that stretch because yeah, he might go big or go home, but that's just who he is. I think he'll do what he has to do to win the game. He'll make the call he thinks is his best, but what might be a big deal down the stretch is you're not going to see like a quarterback sneak from Mahomes because every time he does one, he gets hurt. He got hurt last year, he hurt his knee. Then last week he got his bell rung. So that takes a lot of different. You got to running the ball on 4th and 1 and a quarterback sneak. I'd rather quarterback sneak every time because there's way less chance of a potential, getting rushed in the backfield or, Josh Allen doesn't have to worry about that. So eating the clock using that can also be a factor.
And it's again, like you said, it gives Reed less options with
Mm-hmm.
Mahomes' condition. I think like you said earlier, I think Allen is going to run the ball a little bit. Hopefully, he has that capability. Basically, what the Bills have exactly what the Chiefs had
Mm-hmm.
with the healthy Mahomes. But now you have to give advantage to the Bills with Allen's health and his ability to run the ball.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say it's going to come down to the last. Whoever
Possession.
has the ball last, I think is going to be it's going to be really important. But that's going to be. I'm more excited about that game than Tampa Bay Green Bay.
Yeah, yeah, I probably am too, just to see how Mahomes looks. I mean, we'll see early if it's going to be a game where he's close to 100%, or like you said, if he's still feeling the effects of last week. But um, before we wrap up today, obviously we'll make some game picks. So we'll go back to the Tampa Bay Green Bay game. Are you leaning Green Bay?
I'm leaning Green Bay. Yep, I think in Lambeau. I think again Tom Brady, I always underestimate him, but I think there comes a point where he's got to fall. And I ate my words last year, I'm sure, but I'm having to go with the Packers in Lambeau.
Yeah. So I don't like to toot my own horn too often, but I mean, I will today. So far I'm 9-1 in my playoff picks, so I'm pretty happy so far. However, my two picks today I'm not confident with at all, but I'll probably be 9-3 after the weekend. I'll be open and honest about that. But I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Uh, I I trust Brady more than I trust Aaron Rodgers in playoff games. I like Aaron Rodgers more as a quarterback in general, just because he's funner to watch. He does more. But I like Tampa, what they've been doing. And Tom Brady's not afraid of a little cold weather. That doesn't bother him. And I think for his career to host the first a first Super Bowl, I think it's only fitting that he does it. I think he went to Tampa Bay partly for that reason, and I just think Tampa Bay will get the better of Green Bay again. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. Even though it points to a Green Bay win, teams that usually beat one team the first time lose the next, but I'll go with Tampa Bay.
And I mean, at this time of year, Noah, it's the teams are so close, they're so talented that I mean, it's a pick 'em at this
Yeah.
point. It'll be interesting.
Buffalo at Kansas City. It's the line's Kansas City -3. So pick them too.
That's a pick 'em too. I'm going with Buffalo just because if Mahomes was healthy, I would probably lean towards Kansas City. I'd like to see Buffalo win it all, so I would say Buffalo by a touchdown.
Yeah, another one I'm so not confident with. I'm gonna go with Buffalo too. I've been high on Buffalo all year. Buffalo versus Tom Brady in a Super Bowl. Whoever thought that would happen? I just think that would be a crazy. I mean, it wouldn't be fitting that Brady doesn't go through the AFC East to get to a Super Bowl.
And could you imagine Buffalo fans if Tom Brady beats the Bills? Oh my gosh,
Oh,
they
that's
would
just
turn it to the ground. That is just injury to insult.
yeah,
Actually, it's poetic justice. That story would be fascinating.
yeah, it would be. But yeah, my head says pick Kansas City, but my head said pick
What about
Baltimore.
Mahomes' head? Who does he say to pick?
Yeah, you see in like Daffy Duck. But my head said pick Baltimore last week, but I took Buffalo just because I've been high on them all year, and I'm gonna go Buffalo with the slight upset. But yeah. So for both games, I mean, obviously Green Bay -3.5. So I would take Tampa to cover. And then -3, I mean, we're both picking the Bills, so we both take the Bills to cover.
Definitely. And again, one thing I do like about Allen too, I've kind of watched him. I think everybody's watched him more closely this year, but he's as cool as a cucumber. And I think if there was no Patrick Mahomes, like he would be even more on a pedestal.
Oh yeah, he
Like
would be the
the
next
things
big
that he
thing.
does with the football and his arm and his athleticism, like he's phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
he's almost a victim to Mahomes, sort of his fame and kind of his style. But like when you watch him, he's really he's an amazing player.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I mean, it just his physical ability, the way he runs and how big he's 6'5", 6'6". He's a big man. I mean, he's hard to bring down. Um, so yeah, that wraps up our championship preview. We went through a lot of topics here today. It was a lot of fun, but obviously being in the red now, Adam, what's life like for you? What's on the horizon?
Well, you might say it's like a Phillip Rivers throw deep.
Yeah.
It's a little bit up and down and kind of crazy all over the place. So no, it's good. I mean, we're kind of coping as best as we can. I'd like to kind of get back to normal. I think everybody's getting tired of it, but at least we can talk some football, which is great.
Yeah, at least yeah, we learned this year that Zoom calls are a good route for communication for everybody. I mean, Skype, FaceTime, so to see family and friends. So that's one positive from this past year and a month of just complete shit. But no, you've been on with me a lot this football season. I know you're a busy guy, 3 kids, a lot of stuff going on. So I really appreciate your time, Adam.
Well, Phillip Rivers Jr., I only got 3, so I'm a third as busy.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm 66% less busy than.
Yeah, his wife should be the one retiring, not Philip.
Yes, let's end it on that. Well
Yeah.
said. Doug. Thanks again for having me anytime, Noah.
Perfect. Well, for Adam and me, I'll talk to you guys again Monday after the NFL weekend, but have a safe and healthy weekend, and we'll talk soon.